What happens when one of the best players in World of Tanks gets put in a tank that they know all too well? Well, it's usually Annihilation, and this replay is going to showcase the 60 TP going absolutely ham within World of Tanks. This thing just does not stop for the entire game. Today's player in question is Nazul, and he knows steps all too well, and you're about to find out why. And that is because this player right here in the 60 TP knows all too well the scenarios that happen on steps. And I guess the key thing is that he knows the crossing point at the beginning of the game in the 60 TP to be able to try and get some early damage into anyone that crosses across this river right here. Now then, no one's managed to actually do that, or at least no one's been crossing at the same time that he's pulled up here. Now he has taken the kind of ridge line, which is something that the 60 TP can actually do within World of Tanks. It doesn't have the most awful gun depression, especially when you're on this kind of flat, very slow incline gradient of this hill. The key thing about the 60 TP, I guess, comparatively to some of the other tanks, heavy tanks, is that it does have 750 alpha, similar to that of something like the E100. However, this tank, in my opinion, just has so much more to give than something like the E100. Yes, you can side scrape with the E100, yes, you can do some things like that, but the 60 TP, in terms of versatility, in terms of mobility and feeling a little bit more flexible when you're actually moving around, this thing is where it's at. I think in terms of which one's more powerful, it's kind of down to the player itself and the way in which you like to play, but the 60 TP feels like the more aggressive kind, the one that can kind of face hug you, the one that can get stuck in, and that's kind of my preferred playstyle on World of Tanks, albeit, you know, my limited experience on a PC. However, with the 60 TP, what you can see is he's moving up. He's a top tier tank. There's only 3 tier 10s on each team, and so he really needs to make the impact. He has made a little bit of an impact, 1500 damage to be precise, but at this point it's all about just continuing that onslaught onto the opponents, and especially when they're 2 tiers or 1 tier below you and they have no way of bouncing rounds off of them. Considering the 317mm of penetration that this tank gets, as well as the kind of weakness of the VKB here, which is pretty much the entire turret. And so yeah, this is how these results end up happening, and already 3000 damage done, and this result will only increase as time goes on, and exactly what you'd be thinking from a gameplay that has the thumbnail that this one does. But I think the key aspect of this video is showcasing that you don't always have to play the exact same tanks as everyone else. You don't have to play the T95 Chieftain. You don't have to play things like the Barask if you want to have a tier 8 game. Sometimes you can pick these kind of off-brand tanks that can still be very, very good, and you're seeing this within the 60 TP. Am I saying that this is an unknown tank that no one's ever really done well in? No. What I'm saying is that you can still play these kind of tanks and you can still have results that are kind of world-beating, to be honest with you. Now, the E50 thinks he's got side armor, but because of the caliber of this round, he can basically overmatch him. So yeah, go straight through the E50, and he's feeling a little bit worse for wear, only on 314 hit points, being a one-shot now for pretty much anyone on his team. Now, the 5120, a tank that you definitely don't want to miss and don't want to let come out and clip you. Now, the 5120 does actually have standard rounds, which is something that you don't usually see in World of Tanks. However, Ner'zhul here definitely doesn't have standard rounds, and you're about to see why, and that's because you don't really need to kind of aim with this tank, other than the fact that you do have to aim at things like the super heavies like the Maus, but you know, that's pretty much every tank in the game. No real surprise that you do actually have to aim at that one with this tank. However, shuts down the 5120, which is nice, because leaving an autoloader that can clip you out if they get round you, or can even clip you out from the front if they aim at your weak points, is never a good idea, and the sooner you get them out, the less dangerous they become. Obviously, anyone that's played World of Tanks knows that the autoloaders get more dangerous as the game goes on, and that is because every single hit point that you lose throughout the battle means that they basically only have to hit you one clip less. So for example, at the beginning of the game it's much harder to come round and just YOLO you and take you out of the game, as opposed to later in the game where maybe you only have actually one shot worth of damage, and therefore in their entire clip they only need to land one successful hit to take you out, whereas you would maybe need to hit them multiple times. Now, the Maus here, it's a tank that, you know, could be comparable to the 60 TP. It's a kind of super heavy, at least to a degree. It's a tank that is supposedly a tier 10 heavy that can compete with the 60 TP, but in my personal opinion, when you're in this sort of scenario where you've got heat rounds loaded and you're not really caring about firing gold essentially, then yeah, the 60 TP has the Maus all over the place, and that is exactly why he shuts him down. Now for the keen-eyed of you see that Ner'zhul here has already picked up 8,352 damage, and yeah, there is still 8 tanks on the enemy team left, I believe, maybe even 9 actually to be precise. And so there is plenty more damage left in this game for him to pick up, and that is exactly what he's aiming for. When you've done 8,000 damage and there's that many opponents on the enemy team, all you're thinking about, or at least all I think about, is how can I even improve my score? How can I become kind of the god tier replay that you always and everyone really wishes that they could have? Well, you're seeing here something that you never want to happen, and luckily because of the repair speed that Ner'zhul has, he's not perma-tracked out in the open, because that is definitely not something that you want to happen. Now you see him kind of coming up here, he needs to get rid of some of these tanks, and oh, the Chrysler K actually bounces off the side of him. Don't quite know whether that was because he hit the Jagdtiger and then maybe it bounced into the Chrysler K, or whether it was just an unlucky shot that went into the turret of the Chrysler. Now of course we could find that out if we really wanted to, but we're not that interested because the Chrysler's out of the game now and he shuts down the Progetto 46. Now this Jagdtiger is a little bit of a pain. You don't want to kind of underestimate him, especially when he's firing HE and just being an absolute nuisance, a little rat to you, because that thing, if it takes out one of your crew members, it's just going to be annoying, isn't it? And luckily for Ner'zhul, he knows all about blind firing, and he takes the Jagdtiger out there with a nice blind fire. Now then, Emil 1, a tank that, yeah, it's an autoloader. Yes, it's a tier 8 that could be dangerous should it manage to get around the back of you, but for the most part it's probably not going to be able to do that much to you, and therefore it's a nice juicy snack that if you can manage to hit it at least a couple times. And so having done 9,752 damage, showing with the blind fire of potentially 600 damage, maybe even more, then he's easily past the 10k mark, and that means that any damage he's doing now, it's all about prestige, it's all about trying to get the best replay in the 60 TP, and you're seeing that here as he moves and progresses forward on this flank. Now, his team have kind of been slowly whittling away, however the enemy team have also been slowly whittling away, so it's very much an even game at this point. You can even see it by the hit points in the top of the screen here. We're only down by 300 hit points, which means that it's all down to like we're just one shot, and with that one shot the game is in Ner'zhul's favour. Now there are a few tanks on the enemy team remaining, however the majority of them are actually on a one shot. Now there is a Super Conqueror that could be pretty dangerous, to be honest, and something that you definitely don't want to underestimate, since that tank can be a little bit of a nightmare. However, talking about nightmares, fully aiming at a Leopard PTA and missing when you've only actually got 6 shots left in your tank is not something you want to be doing, because that tank can tear you apart if it does get the side or catches you out in the open. Now that doesn't happen currently, but maybe it will as the game progresses. But what you're seeing here is Ner'zhul quickly loads a HE round, because it's all about getting the HE as and when you can. Will he pen the 114? Oh, of course he does, but he does decide to load the heat round here, which is of course the correct play. Now you're seeing the Emil 1 thinking he's funny, and of course that's not what we like to see, and so he backs a little bit up. The Leopard PTA over here, which Ner'zhul spots and quickly shuts him down. That's what I was talking about. If it catches you out on the side, you can lose your hit points, and unfortunately for the Leopard PTA, that will be the only hit points he'll take off of Ner'zhul, as he remains on 467. He does have to be very careful. The Scorpion G could one-shot him here. The 114 could one-shot him. The Super Conqueror could one-shot him if he manages to high roll, but unfortunately for the Scorpion G, it doesn't work. Now then, the Super Conqueror is the last alive, and so what he has to do is just push forward. Can he get the final damaging hit of the game? Will he do it? Yes, he will. And that is just, I don't even know what to say about this gameplay by Nazul, but probably one of the best 60TP replays you can probably see on YouTube. And of course, I hope you did enjoy this one. And of course, if you want to watch more gameplay like a Manticore just going absolutely ham on Prokhorovka, spotting nearly 17,000 hit points worth of damage, then make sure to hit on the left hand side of the screen. And of course, if you did enjoy this, make sure to subscribe as well. And if you do want to watch something else other than a Manticore going ham, then maybe you want to watch something like a Kranvang just doing absolute bits on the right hand side of the screen. So thank you very much for watching. Of course, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought, and I hope that you join me in the next one. Goodbye.